looks like blood in there. And
it's not blood, it's deer meat. I had a big bag of, there's a farm around here that does deer meat and hamburgers.
Holy so we got a body.
Do it.
Yes, I would like to say something.
Go ahead.
I'm innocent. F you all. You're garbage.
Case 1. The Trunk of the Sedan. It was a quiet morning in Alexandria, Minnesota, May 2022, when officers pulled over a battered sedan with a busted rear window and a sagging tire. Behind the wheel was 28-year-old Julissa Trotter, and something about her was immediately wrong. She was calm in a way that didn't match the state of her car. Fast food bags, a shovel, a saw, and a smell that made officers' stomachs turn. She waved off their concern, said everything was fine. It was not fine. In the trunk, buried under a pile of blankets and trash, officers found the body of 6-year-old Eli Hart. Eli was the kind of kid teachers remember for years, obsessed with buses, always first to volunteer for a fishing trip, a storyteller who lit up a room. But behind that bright exterior was a custody battle that had been raging for months. His father had begged the courts for help, insisting again and again that Trotter was unstable and that Eli wasn't safe with her. Records later confirmed a documented history: drug use, volatile behavior, repeated police contact. And yet, just weeks before his death, she was handed custody. What came next wasn't impulsive. Trotter had bought ammunition days in advance. She picked Eli up under the guise of a normal visit, drove him through the city, and fired 9 rounds in her own son while he sat buckled into his booster seat. Investigators believe she then stayed in that car with his body for hours before anyone found them. Afterward, she tossed the weapon in a public trash can and drove around town like nothing had happened, broken window and all. When police finally stopped her, she claimed she'd already dropped Eli off safely. The trunk told a different story. At sentencing in February 2023, Eli's father spoke about the boy who dreamed of driving a school bus one day. The judge handed down life without parole. And then came the moment that went viral around the world. Trotter erupting mid-sentencing, cutting off the judge, refusing to accept a shred of responsibility. She'll spend the rest of her life behind bars. Eli's family has since pushed for reform, demanding that custody courts stop ignoring the warning signs next time. Because there almost always are warning signs. If you're finding these cases as unsettling as we do, consider subscribing to Daily Crime Archive. It genuinely helps us keep digging into stories like this one.
Please come home, Sandra, if you're out there, come home. If anybody's got my daughter, my beautiful princess daughter, please bring her home.
Well, I mean, why did you phone the police when you knew where she was?
So nobody suspected anything.
And how would, by phoning the police, people not suspect you? What did you hope to achieve by that?
Case 2. The Staged Disappearance. February 19th, 2008. Dewsbury, West Yorkshire. 9-year-old Shannon Matthews vanished on the short walk home from school, a route she'd walked 100 times before. By nightfall, the whole town was searching. Flashlights combing gardens, volunteers knocking on every door. Her mother, Karen Matthews, appeared on camera sobbing, pleading for her daughter's return. It looked, to everyone watching, like a nightmare no parent should endure. The search became one of the largest in British history. Helicopters, sniffer dogs, over 1,000 homes checked. The whole country was still raw from the unsolved disappearance of Madeline McCann the year before, and this case pulled at that same open wound. But something about Karen fell off to investigators. Her press appearances seemed rehearsed. She avoided eye contact. She seemed almost more focused on the reward fund, which had climbed to £50,000, than on her missing daughter. Then, 24 days in, a tip led police to a flat less than a mile from Shannon's own home, the residence of Michael Donovan, uncle to Karen's boyfriend. Inside, hidden in the base of a bed frame, they found Shannon alive, drugged, terrified. She'd been kept sedated and restrained for weeks. The relief lasted about as long as it took to hear the truth. This wasn't a stranger's crime. Karen and Donovan had planned the entire disappearance together, hoping to split the reward money once Donovan found her. Shannon had been dosed daily with sedatives, tied up whenever Donovan left the flat, and told her mother didn't want her home. When that detail came out in court, it ended any doubt about Karen's involvement. Both were convicted of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and perverting the course of justice, 8 years each. Karen was released in 2012 under a new identity. Shannon, too, was given a new identity and has never been publicly located since. Britain didn't just lose faith in a missing girl's mother. It questioned how a community's compassion could be so completely exploited.
Do you regret pulling the trigger and killing them? You don't. Why not?
Oh my, because I saved them.
Case 3. The Colonel's Wife. January 2011, a gated community outside Tampa, Florida. A welfare check at the home of Julie Skinecker led officers to a scene no one could have predicted from the outside. A tidy suburban house, a decorated Army colonel's wife, and 2 teenagers dead from gunshot wounds. 16-year-old Calix was found in her bedroom. 13-year-old Beau was in the garage. Their mother sat inside, covered in blood, barely responsive. From the outside, the Skinecker family looked like a success story. But Julie had struggled for years with bipolar disorder and depression, cycling through hospitalizations that friends knew about but never connected to any real danger. On the morning of the killings, she bought a revolver. Hours later, she picked Beau up from soccer practice and shot him in the passenger seat. Then she drove home, parked in the garage, and went upstairs to confront Calix, who had reportedly been openly critical of her mother in the days prior. Julie shot her too. In her recorded confession, she admitted she'd planned it for days, said her children were disrespectful and she couldn't take it anymore. Not a breakdown in the moment, a decision made in advance and carried out step by step. Her defense argued insanity, leaning hard on her psychiatric history. Prosecutors countered with the timeline, the gun purchase, the drive home, the calm confession. The jury deliberated for just 2 hours before convicting her of 2 counts of first-degree murder. 2 consecutive life sentences, no parole. Her ex-husband, Colonel Parker Skinecker, later described his children as the pride of his life. A wound, he said, that would never close.
We also then began to find out that she had a monster in her life from the age of 9, being shown pornography, being raped. All of those things together made her a broken person.
Case 4. 13 months, 3 sons. Bellefontaine, Ohio, 2015. 23-year-old Brittany Pilkington confessed to something almost too horrific to comprehend, smothering all 3 of her young sons over the course of just over a year. The family's home life was already complicated. Brittany's husband, Joseph, had previously been married to her own mother before their relationship began, a detail that left extended family uneasy from the start. In July 2014, 3-month-old Neil died suddenly. At the time, it was labeled SIDS. In April 2015, 4-year-old Gavin was found unresponsive. Then in August, 3-month-old Noah died the same way. 3 sons, 13 months, and only their sister left untouched. When confronted, Brittany confessed. She said she believed her husband favored the boys over their daughter, and that removing them would somehow even the scales and win her more attention. She described, calmly, holding a blanket over each child's face. Not one impulsive act, but 3 separate, deliberate ones. The case dragged through years of competency hearings before Brittany pleaded guilty in 2021 to 3 counts of aggravated murder, avoiding the death penalty in exchange for 3 consecutive life sentences. Her daughter was placed in protective custody, the only member of that household to make it out. To this day, people argue over whether she was a calculating killer or a profoundly damaged woman failed by every system meant to catch this before it happened 3 times. What isn't up for debate? Neil Gavin and Noah are gone. Case 5. The Gully Outside Town. November 29th, 2014. Santa Croce Camarina, Sicily. 8-year-old Loris Stivel never made it to school. His mother, Veronica Panarella, told police she dropped him off herself. The search that followed ended within hours. Loris's body was found in a remote gully, his school bag scattered nearby. Cracks in Veronica's story appeared almost immediately. No camera anywhere caught her car that morning. Her timeline kept shifting, and her demeanor, investigators noted, didn't read as a grieving mother's. The autopsy found the cause of death was strangulation using cable ties, not the work of a stranger, but of someone Loris trusted enough to be close to. Confronted with the evidence, Veronica changed her account more than once. She eventually accused her father-in-law of the murder, claiming he'd killed Loris after being discovered in an affair with her. It was a serious public accusation, and it fell apart completely. He had a verified alibi. Phone records placed him elsewhere. Prosecutors laid out what they believed actually happened. An argument at home, the cable ties, the drive to the gully, and then a fabricated story about a normal school drop-off to cover it all. In 2016, Veronica was convicted and sentenced to 30 years, the maximum available short of a full life sentence under Italian law. The judge did not mince words about her character. She has continued, from prison, to insist on her innocence and to repeat her accusation against her father-in-law, a claim that's already cost her in a defamation suit he later won. Quick reminder, if this kind of deep dive case coverage is your thing, hitting subscribe on Daily Crime Archive means you won't miss the next one.
Ambulance service, is the patient breathing?
No.
They're not breathing?
No.
Okay. And who was it we're talking about?
Lexi, she's 3.
She's 3. Bear with me. Okay.
Case 6. 2 daughters in 18 days. Warwickshire, England, January 2018. A frantic 911 call. A 3-year-old girl not breathing. Paramedics rushed young Lexi to the hospital. She didn't survive. Her mother, 23-year-old Louise Porton, showed almost no emotion at the scene, a detail that stuck with the paramedics who were there. 18 days later, a second call. Louise's 17-month-old daughter, Scarlett, had also stopped breathing. She also died. 2 children, 2 unexplained deaths, 18 days apart. Investigators couldn't treat that as coincidence. What they found on Louise's phone told the real story. Messages to multiple men on dating apps sent within hours of Lexi's death. Search history that included phrases about methods of causing death and suffocation. Neighbors described a mother who often left her daughters shut in a room alone for hours while she went out. Medical examinations of both girls pointed to deliberate suffocation. No natural cause, no accident. At trial in 2019, prosecutors argued Louise saw her children as obstacles standing between her and the life she wanted. Jurors heard about the flirtatious texts sent within hours of Lexi's death, the search history, and the near-total absence of grief at either funeral. Convicted on 2 counts of murder, she was sentenced to life with a minimum term of 32 years. Reporters dubbed her the Tinder killer mom, a headline that captured the public's disbelief that a parent could trade her children for a night of attention from strangers. Case 7. The baby monitor that exposed a cult. Courtroom, Czech Republic, 2007. A neighbor's baby monitor accidentally picked up a signal from next door, and instead of an infant, the screen showed a chained, sobbing 8-year-old boy in a bare, dark room. That accidental glimpse led police to the home of Klara Maurova, a single mother of 2 young sons, Andrei and Jakub. What officers found inside was almost impossible to process. Both boys locked in cages, bruised, starved, and terrified. They described being burned, beaten, forced to drink cold water as punishment, and subjected to ritualized cruelty for years. Clara initially claimed she'd simply lost control as an overwhelmed single parent. The truth ran much deeper. She hadn't acted alone. She'd fallen under the influence of a woman calling herself Anika, who claimed to be a 13-year-old girl needing shelter. Anika wasn't a child at all. She was 33-year-old Barbara Skrylova, an elaborate con artist who had forged documents and physically disguised herself to pass as a teenager. She convinced Clara and her sister Katerina that torturing the boys was some form of spiritual cleansing, tied to beliefs from a fringe religious group. Court testimony detailed cages, days without food, and a woman posing as a child directing the abuse from inside the household the entire time. After her arrest, Barbara fled the country, resurfaced in Norway, this time posing as a teenage boy, and even enrolled in school there before investigators caught up with her. At trial in 2008, both boys testified about years of suffering at their own mother's hands. Clara claimed she'd been manipulated and brainwashed. Psychologists agreed she'd been emotionally dependent and controlled, but prosecutors argued she still made the choice, again and again, to carry out the abuse. Clara received 9 years. Her sister got 10. Barbara, widely seen as the architect of it all, received just 5, a sentence many considered shockingly light given her role. The boys were placed in protective custody, left to rebuild a life defined for years by cages and cruelty disguised as discipline. Case 8, a bedtime routine turned massacre. San Marcos, California, November 2nd, 1997. A 911 call from a man who'd just been told by his girlfriend over the phone that she'd killed her 4 sons. Police arrived to find 14-year-old Brandon, 7-year-old Austin, 6-year-old Brigham, and 4-year-old Matthew all shot at close range. Their mother, 33-year-old Susan Eubanks, was on the floor with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to her stomach, alive, but her sons were not. Hours earlier, Susan had a violent argument with her boyfriend, who left the house. Fueled by alcohol and prescription drugs, she retrieved a revolver and moved from room to room. Brandon, the eldest, appears to have been killed first. The younger boys were found tucked into their beds, as though she'd staged one last bedtime ritual before ending their lives. She then shot herself, but survived. Prosecutors built their case around motive and premeditation. Witnesses recalled Susan saying things like, "If I can't have my kids, no one can." At the hospital, she told detectives outright that she'd killed her sons to hurt her ex-husband and her boyfriend, that she'd seen them as leverage in her own anger. In 1999, she was convicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. She spent years on California's death row before a 2024 legal shift, tied to the state's execution moratorium, converted her sentence to life without parole, a decision that reopened old wounds for the families who'd wanted the original sentence carried out in full.
Je ne suis pas un monstre. Non. Je suis pas un monstre. Je suis une mère, je suis une grand-mère. Je suis pas un monstre.
Case 9. The Garden in northern France. Villers-à-Tertry, near Lille, France, July 2010. A couple moving into a new home found something horrifying while working in the garden. The skeletal remains of 2 infants buried in the soil. Investigators traced the property back to its previous residents, Dominique Catres, a 45-year-old nurse's aide, and her husband. When questioned, Dominique confessed almost immediately and calmly to far more than the 2 bodies found in the yard. 8 infants in total, over nearly 2 decades, each one killed shortly after a secret birth. She told police she concealed every pregnancy, loose clothing, no doctor visits, and given birth alone each time, disposing of each newborn before anyone could find out. Her stated reason was almost unbearably simple. She didn't want more children and couldn't bring herself to use contraception or seek an abortion. Neighbors described her as an unremarkable, well-liked home care nurse. No one had any idea. During questioning, she revealed a darker root to the pattern, a fear dating back to childhood abuse by her own father of ever being pregnant again, one that apparently never left her even decades later. Psychological evaluations described a woman who was repressed and emotionally shut down rather than violently unstable. Someone who said she'd never felt any bond with the infants at all. At trial in 2015, prosecutors emphasized the scale and repetition. 8 killings across 17 years, each one a choice she could have made differently. The defense leaned on her trauma history. In the end, the court handed down a sentence that stunned the country, just 9 years. The backlash was immediate. Advocacy groups and commentators called it a dramatic undercorrection for 8 deliberate deaths. Her husband, who said he'd known nothing, was never charged. Her adult daughters were left to reckon with a mother they thought they knew. Case 10. The custody battle that ended in a harbor. November 5, 2001. Keystone State Park, Pennsylvania. 28-year-old Andrew Bagby was found shot 5 times. The prime suspect, his ex-girlfriend, Dr. Shirley Turner, a Canadian physician more than a decade his senior. Their relationship had been volatile from the start. Friends described Shirley as controlling, prone to showing up uninvited, unable to accept that Andrew wanted out. In the days before his death, Andrew told friends he was afraid of what she might do. Ballistics tied a recently purchased handgun to Shirley. Phone records placed her traveling to Pennsylvania and back around the time of the murder. Before an arrest could be made, she fled to Newfoundland, Canada, and then revealed she was pregnant with Andrew's child. She gave birth to a son, Zachary, in July 2002. For Andrew's devastated parents, Kate and David Bagby, their grandson was a living piece of the son they'd lost, but he was in the custody of the woman they believed had killed him. As extradition proceedings dragged through Canadian courts, witnesses came forward describing Shirley's long history of stalking and threats toward former partners. None of it was enough to strip her of custody before conviction. She kept Zachary throughout the appeals process, granted bail again and again. The Bagbys, desperate to stay close to their grandson, agreed to supervised visits with the woman they held responsible for their son's murder, a situation David later called torture. In August 2003, facing the real possibility of extradition, Shirley made a final, devastating choice. She gave Zachary a lethal dose of medication, strapped him into a harness against her chest, and jumped from a fishing wharf into Conception Bay. Neither survived. The case became the subject of the documentary Dear Zachary, made by Andrew's childhood friend, a film that began as a tribute and became a public reckoning with a legal system that hadn't listened. It directly led to legislative reform in Canada, tightening bail rules for defendants accused of serious violent crimes. For the Bagbys, it came too late. They lost a son to obsession and a grandson to a mother who chose control over his life. 10 women, 10 children, or more, who trusted the one person who was supposed to protect them above anyone else. Some of these cases were driven by rage, some by control, some by a kind of calculation that's hard to even categorize. What connects them all is the same devastating truth. The greatest threat to a child isn't always a stranger in the dark. Sometimes it's already inside the house. If this deep dive kept you watching until the end, that's exactly why we do this at Daily Crime Archive. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell us in the comments which case affected you the most.